when you read something or hear something from somebody you don't know and it's the exact same thing that you've gone through, then you immediately feel a connection to them. And we find that we're more alike than different. And all these facets of our personality and struggles that we're going through are really, boiled down to the fact that we all have them and we can all really relate in so many ways. And I think that mental health is so much about that.
I'm Lily Cornell Silver, and welcome to Mind Wide Open, my mental health focused interview series. Today, I am talking to publicist and creative Jasper Guest and actress Brittany Snow. These amazing women have come together to create September Letters, which is a mental health focused letter writing campaign that encourages vulnerability, connection, and mental health destigmatization. Today, we are talking about how to get involved in September Letters, mental health experiences such as eating disorders, anxiety, and physical ailments, and our relationships with spirituality and the metaphysical realm and how that has helped us. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, you guys.
Hi. How are you?
Thank you so much for being here. I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Of course. I'm so excited to have you. How are you guys? Let's start there.
Pretty good. It's the weird thing I think about quarantine stuff is that like now it's a monotonous routine almost, like we're getting used to it, which is maybe a good thing, but I'm finding like little bits of joy in the monotony of it all. And so it's kind of nice. It's like the new normal, which is kind of cool. You learn to adapt.
I mean, I agree with Brittany. I feel like every day feels a little bit like the same, and it's a little bit like Groundhog's Day. And then I mean, literally I was walking my dog the other day and I thought, I wonder what I should make him for Halloween. And I was like, oh my God, it's November. Like we just, like where? And like, then I got scared. Like, is there like, what's going on? But I think that something's happening because we all have just like adjusted to the new normal.
Totally.
And it's the same thing every day because I've just gotten into this routine and then you kind of get lost on really what day.
Right.
So and I think that question's so hard right now. Like, how are you? It's like, well, living in a pandemic, talking to people through computers. I'm great.
Totally. Nobody's like 100% right now. That's in my second interview. I talked to Dr. Mark Brackett, who works at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And he just wrote a book called Permission to Feel. And it's his whole thing is when people ask, how are you, like to answer it honestly. But now is such a hard time to do that because it's like, do you have an hour and a half,
Totally.
So I'm so excited to have you guys on because as people know who've, watched the show and listened, ending the stigma around mental health is like one of the most important things to me and such a goal of this series for me in general. So I wanted to talk to you guys about the September Letters campaign and hear from you guys in your own words what that is for people who might not know.
Yeah. So mental health has been kind of a passion of mine and something that I've really put a lot of drive behind because it is so important to destigmatize the emotion behind sharing your story and how people are so afraid of the shame that they feel comes with sharing your truth. And I've been working with different initiatives and charities since I was probably 21, so since 2008. Wow. And I started September Letters because I think it's so important to I've used the word destigmatize, but even like a lesser crazy word, I guess, is just like being honest with yourself and with other people is really the crux of other people feeling not alone and feeling connected. When you read something or hear something from somebody you don't know and it's the exact same thing that you've gone through, then you immediately feel a connection to them. And we find that we're more alike than different. And all these facets of our personality and struggles that we're going through are really, boiled down to the fact that we all have them and we can all really relate in so many ways. And I think that mental health is so much about that, is finding the strength within yourself, but also reaching out to a community and feeling a part of, because we're so much stronger in, united and together. And even if you're not now, especially with the pandemic, like around people, there's ways of feeling connected and supported. So September Letters is really a platform and a website where people can share their stories and feel comfortable to share their truth and feel connected.
That's amazing. And that's where I think there can be so much misconception, is that everyone has mental health in the same way that everyone has physical health, and needs to be taken care of by everybody. I'm curious, I haven't asked this yet. Where did you guys get the name?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this really started because I read an article in a magazine when I was a teenager, and it was the first time that I heard somebody else's words in their story, and found my own. And so I carried around this article in my back pocket for months to kind of, I don't know, connect with this idea that there is hope. And this woman who I had never met recovered from this thing that I didn't even know I had. And then I shared my own mental health journey many, many years later in an article. And then I went to a coffee shop a couple weeks after the article came out, and a woman at the coffee shop was carrying around my article in her back pocket. And so it was this very full circle moment where I felt like here we were just sharing our stories and trying to connect with somebody. And this was the thing that both of us and maybe the next person needed in order to get through. And so September is actually the month that I always identify with in terms of hope, because it's my recovery month. And I have 11 years of recovery from what that article was about. And I think that September to me is always like I get to September and I feel better because I know I've made it through another year. And so I wanted to do something with September, but I didn't really know what to do about it. And then Jasper actually was the one that was like, September letters. And I remember thinking, duh, of course, we're sharing letters, we're connecting with writing. And so it made so much sense. And I loved that she was the person that came up with it, because I think I was too close to it to really put a title to what I was wanting to do.
Totally. That's beautiful. I love that story. I just think that's like the most amazing thing, and so full circle, and like would just be a total like dissolve into tears moment.
We both did. I mean, this girl that I had never met before, we were both standing in a coffee shop crying. And it was this weird moment where we had no idea who each other were in terms of like personally. Right. And there was such a connection there, which I feel like is what September Letters is all about, that you recognize your own self in other people and vice versa. And I think that connection is so important.
That's so beautiful, and such a full circle moment for you, from coming from like reading someone else's words and feeling like validated by them, and then to know you're making that impact on other people. And so I think that's why I think this platform is so incredible, because it allows everybody, to share their own stories and hopefully validate and make an impact on other people.
That's hopefully what we're trying to do is pay it forward in a weird way. And I think there's so much recovery and gratitude that comes when you share your story and then you feel like you've made a difference. I think that is sometimes what helps you more than anything is giving it away.
Absolutely. So for me, a huge reason why I started this series is because of my own mental health journey. And most of the guests I've had on have said they got into the mental health field because of their own experience with their mental health or a loved one's experience with mental health. So I would love to hear from you guys how your mental health journeys have inspired you being in the mental health space.
Yeah, I mean, I think weirdly enough, I've always been a very empathetic and sensitive kid. I mean, it's been funny that I am an actor and that I wanted to be in this field, because even when I was a kid, I would cry all the time. I would see another kid crying and then I'd start crying. And right. I was just this sponge of like emotion. So it just always was in my wheelhouse to have some sort of like mental health component to my life. I think it would have been a part of my life regardless, but I was a kid actor and I felt, this need to be perfect. And I kind of went down a path of what many women and men go through in their teens, where I felt out of control and out of place. And so I started dieting and restricting. And then I went down a really intense eating disorder path that I've been pretty vocal about. And then because of that and getting better through that, I actually developed this way of thinking that was very structured and rigid. And then when I got healthy, I had to completely rewire my brain. And so I developed a new really fun mental health journey, which was an anxiety disorder, because I didn't have the necessary things that I used to use to deal with everyday life. Right. I didn't have those like isms in my life. So I would just have panic attacks all the time and I couldn't even audition. I had to take years off from acting because I would have debilitating like breakdowns where I couldn't talk and I would shake and I wouldn't be able to speak to people. And I didn't know what was going on with me because there was nothing that really said why this was happening. I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary that would mess up my chemistry, but it was all in my head. And so my mental health journey really lied with a lot of people in my toolbox, including hypnotherapy, therapists, healers, spirituality, regular, doctors, all these different things. I mean, my dad, my 82-year-old father calls them like, go to one of your gurus, like one of your gurus will like figure this out. And I really did have so many people because it was at the foremost in the forefront of my life, trying to understand my own head. And I think that what came with that is a lot of grace and compassion and gratitude around it, because I really feel like this was a calling of mine anyway. So it's probably a good thing I went through all of it.
Absolutely. That's so amazing. I thinking about you being young and crying all the time. It's like definitely a Pisces.
Yeah. Such a Pisces.
Pisces tendencies.
Every day.
But that's something that's so interesting that I feel like isn't talked about as much, is that even after you had recovered, you had to, do that whole rewiring of the brain. Like your brain develops these tendencies to support whatever disorder, whatever mental illness almost like to overcompensate, to be like, okay, this is how we're structuring our brain. And so that's super important. And I'm so glad you're talking about that, is the aftermath of that. Like, it's not just you've recovered and then you're done. It is for any kind of recovery, it is one day at a time.
Definitely. And I think, in all the programs and all the things that people talk about, you let go of these crutches that you have, and then the real feelings happen. The real crap happens after that, because you have to deconstruct what really that was covering up. And that's where like the growth comes in, is like the way that you really see how strong you are. And that's what I'm most proud of. People are always like, why did you take so many years off of acting? And I think to myself, like, those years were the best years because I am here today because of them. So
Absolutely. And that's something that I had to talk about with my therapist a lot, especially after I lost my dad, is I was in such a state of shock, and I compensated with like very almost OCD like tendencies of like, these are the things I do to keep my brain in order. And she painted it for me really well with a visual of like, you're white knuckling right now, and like that's taking a lot more energy ultimately than it would to just let go. And like the letting go is going to be absolutely terrifying, because you're going to fall, like you're letting go of like the monkey bar or whatever, but you're going to fall, but eventually you're going to land. And so that's like the image I've always had in my mind of noticing when I'm white knuckling, and when it's like, okay, like you said, the real work happens once you let go of that and are able to, land on your feet again.
You always do eventually, sometimes.
Right. Sometimes it takes longer than other times, but it happens.
You fall and you get back up, and you fall and you pop. Yeah.
Exactly. And then Jasper, how about you?
Yeah. I mean, I also think that recovery is every single day, like a new day. And I agree with what you're saying. That's rarely spoken about. It's really never brought up, that people think, okay, I did it, it's over.
Right.
And it's really not. Like every day it's such a process. For me, I had a lot of physical challenges as a child, and I had very bad ears. I had like very bad lungs. I was bursting my eardrums. I was losing my hearing. I was losing a sense like constantly. I mean, it was like constant. And as a very young child, and it created a whole bunch of problems for me. And because of the physical ailments that lasted into adulthood, like usually people grow out of these things, it did not happen for me. It wasn't until like my early 20s that I was like, I really can't function like this anymore. And I changed my diet, and I got into hypnotherapy, and I got more spiritual advisors and all these different things, because it started to affect my everyday life. When you have certain physical things that are, like that take away from everyday life, you start developing hiccups or developing different crutches to get, to work around. And so that I had and I really love what Brittany said. Like, I think it's so interesting when you live through something, because you can understand something a little bit more than someone just coming into your life and not really understanding the depth of that.
Right.
And then I definitely had developed an anxiety panic disorder in my, mid 20s after dealing with work and life and people and things. And I really put the brakes on everything and really try to restructure everything in my life. And so I have a very regimented schedule daily based on my hearing. Like I have to do certain cardio things to keep my eardrums open. I eat a certain way to make sure the inflammation is down. I meditate. I do all these things. And if I let one day go, if I'm like, oh, I'm just a little bit lazy today, something happens. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to do it again. So I had she and I have a little bit of a parallel story in terms of like what, has worked for us. But I started more from a physical condition and it kind of manifested into everything else.
Gotcha. It's really amazing to hear both of you. I mean, not on different ends of the spectrum, but finding similar tools to help you through. And that's something we were talking about the other day with hypnotherapy. That hypnotherapy is something that both of you really relied upon. And I've never done that. I'd be super curious to hear from you guys what that looks like for you.
I mean, it's really rewiring your brain in such a gentle way. It's all positive. It really cured my anxiety. I don't know how exactly it works, but it's all about your subconscious and your subconscious believing what you're hearing is fact. That's how I view it. But I don't know, Jasper, you have a different...
it's a little bit similar. I've been working with my hypnotherapist for over 10 years. I mean, I now see her at least once a month. And I do phone sessions obviously now, but when I went to the office so many years ago and I was really nervous because I was like, this sounds really bizarre. And I'm into bizarre things, but this was like a little bit nerve wracking, like someone going to your brain. What does that mean?
Right.
What happens for me in my sessions is just what Brittany said. Like, I mean, I remember you go under trance. And when you're in trance, I thought, am I going to lose control? Am I not going to be able to? Lately, I just did a session with her and, I came up as 2 years old and she was like, okay, what do you see? And I was like, a clown. I don't know why I see a clown, but I see a clown. So the whole thing. And she, did the blockage and blah, blah. And I called my mom after the session and I was like, was there a clown when I was 2? She goes, yeah, I'm so upset. For your birthday, I had a clown when you turned 2 and you hated it. And I was the worst mother ever. And I was like, oh my God. And like, that's what happens with hypnotherapy. It's just like, hey, I have this problem. Can you please fix it? And then they find what is blocking in your brain subconsciously and they reconvert the path. I'm just so incredibly grateful for that. And I think hypnotherapist is a very important distinction because there's like hypnotist and then there's hypnotherapy. And that's, the thing that I love the most.
Absolutely. I super appreciate the emphasis that both of you have put just in the short time we've been talking on like self-care and spirituality and finding things like that work for you. Because I think especially, in the society we live in today, when it comes to mental health, so often it's like you think of like big pharma, like you're just going to get prescribed 50 different things that give you 50 different side effects that end up causing worse, and some like I'm on medication can be so incredibly helpful, but I don't believe it should always be the first option, and I think exploring other modalities like that is so important and can be so helpful. And that's absolutely what has helped me the most, like in my mental health journey is learning those different forms of self-care and like doing inner child work and inner healing and, healing doing shadow work and things like that. 'Cause that's where you really like address it within yourself.
Brittany and I have spoken about this a lot. When everyone says a toolbox, I remember being a teenager and be like, what is that? What does that mean? I don't even know what a tool is. Like, where do I go get these tools?
Right.
I think that that's what's so amazing. What you're doing is that you're giving people a plethora of options to be like, look at all these different experts in different fields and how find something that can help you, and you have to start somewhere, what?
One size does not fit all. Like just taking a pill for one person could help that person, but also like a hypnotherapist could totally not work for the next person. But there's all these different people and all these different things, and you find what like resonates with you. And like Jasper said, that's your toolbox. And it's beautiful what you are doing because you're giving so many different varieties of ways to get in there and help.
Thank you. In creating this series, it was for me, so much of it is about opening that accessibility, because I've, as we've all kind of, it seems like we were in the same boat with this, like I've had the privilege of having access to all these different modalities. And if I want to go see a hypnotherapist, to go see a hypnotherapist. And in the work I've done so far in the mental health space, it's been really illuminating to find out how inaccessible. And that's, where this series is so big for me, because I want to bring in, as you guys were saying, all these different tools to fill your toolbox in a way that is accessible and that anybody can use, to whatever works best for them. So, I super appreciate that. And I appreciate that about September Letters as well, is that it's like, it is, it's not one size fits all, and everyone has to find what works best for them in their own journey.
Mm-hmm. I think it's super important too, because like we can talk about hypnotherapy all day, but let's be honest. I mean, we're pretty privileged that we even have the ability to go see a hypnotherapist.
Absolutely.
And that's not necessarily the way that people get better a lot of times. And so I think hopefully what we're doing with September Letters, and also what you're doing, is giving these like tiny little things that you can do. You can read a letter, you can, watch something, you can listen to someone. Those little things I think are so monumental too.
I think Brittany and I were really excited to find all the scientific, studies backing up letter writing, and anyone can write a letter, anyone can journal, but how that really helps you work through a trauma. And that is accessible. And a lot of people hold things in. And when they start to talk about it, they're like, oh, whoa, like more people feel like this than I realized. I'm so not alone. But it's the next step in it is just, how do we make it accessible to everyone? Mm-hmm. And so just small little things, I think, can at least start people on their path to find the next thing.
Definitely. And I like that you guys brought up journaling too, because that's something that's been so huge for me, and I think can serve a similar function to things like hypnotherapy and other modalities, in the sense that it is a subconscious release, and helps you explore yourself. And that's where you can do the work of like exploring inner child and things like that, is just by writing it down. And I've totally seen the same thing, Jasper, of like all these different studies that are like, this helps so much, like this is really underrated.
Completely. Because I think journaling also really overwhelms some people who do not feel comfortable writing and finding their voice. Like, you don't even need to do that. And Brittany says this all the time, like, write a haiku, do a poem, like do like a lyric. It doesn't matter. And you can literally just draw a heart, but that's something that you're starting to like rev up the juices to go into a different direction.
And it's externalization in some form, which is so important, especially now.
We are rushing around so often, or in our own minds. And it's very rare that we set aside time to just actually do something for ourselves, with not having to post it on Instagram and not having to talk about it to everybody, but really taking that moment to like be like, this is going to help me feel better. And I think that is where that recovery starts, is the like self-care that it takes.
Right. I think about like, I started college, and after the first semester, I was like, if I go back, like I will break, and so I took that semester off. And even though my mom is incredibly supportive and most people in my life are super supportive, there's still that weird stigma around like taking time off, no matter what it is, whether it's taking a break from your career or taking a break from school. Like, I feel like we can get caught up in this system of like constant productivity. And if you're not being productive, then you're not a valued member of society in some way.
It's so funny to me that is such a generational thing too. I mean, I feel like it's kind of trickled down from generation to generation, that you do so much and you have to work harder. I love my grandfather so much, but yesterday I called him and he was like, how's the career going? Like, what are you doing? What's next for you? And you're like, you can also ask me like how I am, but I think it's not anybody's fault, because it's just ingrained in our system to ask about what we're doing instead of who we are or how we are. And I think that's changing. I think like we're aware of it. And the more and more that we speak openly about how our productivity is not in the forefront and shouldn't be in charge. And it doesn't matter if we get things done. It matters about who we are as people. I think that will change little by little. And definitely, I mean, we're talking about like taking time off of like big, things, college, career things. But I think also in the micro view of it, it's taking like an hour to like go take a walk instead of having to answer all these emails or like call your, all these people that you need to call back. It's taking that time for yourself. And it can be as little as being like, you know what, today I'm not going to feel pressured to have to do this because this matters so much. Like, I'm going to take the time for myself.
I think especially now where the lines between like home and work are so blurred, like there's so little boundary between that with everything being on Zoom. Like I go from like Zoom therapy to like Zoom hanging out with friends to Zoom now I'm in class to Zoom now I'm working. So it's like, it's difficult to create those boundaries, but I totally agree with you. And that's something that hopefully people can take on in their own personal agenda. So wanted to talk a little bit about, the stress of the holidays, especially this year where things are so unprecedented. Mental health can be very exacerbated during this time. And if that's something that you guys have experienced, and if so, how do you navigate the stress of the holidays?
I come from a very strange background with the holidays where like, I don't really like the holidays. I feel like I'm Scrooge saying like I like other holidays. I don't know why I don't like the holidays. Don't fault that for me, but like I think it gives me a lot of anxiety. It's just
sure.
So this time always gives me a lot of stress. I love my family dearly, but like, there's a lot that goes on when you're around your family and a lot of things, and I really rely on this toolbox that we keep talking about when I go back home to see my family. And I have, people and support system that I call, I have books that I bring. And I kind of always go back to like, really simple notions of like what is actually true, what is a story that my childhood wants to like bring up. I find it so important to just stay really present and enjoy the fact that like having a family and being around family is so important. A lot of people don't have that, and to not take it for granted.
If, having had like a loss, like multiple big losses in the family, like that's going to be, I think for most people, like that's going to be something that's very triggered during the holidays when that emphasis is placed on family, especially this year with COVID. Like there's going to be a lot of, empty seats, and that's something that I hope people feel supported in, and I hope that there is a conversation around is that loss is already something that's exacerbated during this time.
I think the most important thing, because I also struggle with anxiety around the holidays, and I'm lucky to have like loving parents and I get along with them. It's great, but there's always other family members that cause whatever, is really, and I think loss is what you feel the most lost during the holidays. And I think that's why, I don't have either the love of the holidays like you do. I think because it just brings up a lot that I'm just like, can you just take a break? Like I just can't from this emotion for a second. So I think the most important thing that I do personally is like plan the toolbox of what I can use when something is happening. Because the last thing you want to do is when you become in crisis is like, what do I do now? It's a little bit too late. So like, I really try to think beforehand, like, what can I do? Is there a mantra I can say? Can I meditate beforehand? Can I, listen to this tape? Can I do this or that to try to get myself in a better place? Because I think for me, I found that if I don't plan ahead for something, then it starts to get into a chaotic space.
How would you say your spiritual or metaphysical journey has affected your mental health?
I learned as I got older that I was very different. And my parents really encouraged, I was very lucky, so lucky to have like parents who really encouraged conversation. Like they were constantly asking how we were feeling and how we were doing. But I was also raised with believing in angels and talking to psychics and understanding that I was a Gemini and Pisces rising. My mom used to say, you're a Gemini, like you've got all these subjects in front of you. Why don't you try to just focus on one and then move to the next? And understanding me actually was the most important thing. And spirituality, to me, gives you a roadmap of yourself. In the times that I've had the darkest moments of my life, I have really, leaned into a therapist or a hypnotherapist or journaling or whatever, but I've also really leaned into like the metaphysical community more than anything, that's helped me understand who I am and why I'm going through something specifically, because it's basically explaining stuff. And for me, being a human is really difficult. Like the growth is really hard and every day is a challenge. And for me, if someone can tell me like, well, this is why this is happening and here's how you could maneuver out of it, is really helpful. And I think for anyone to have a roadmap, because that's what I think the biggest question is like, well, how do I do this? And everyone has their own individual, blueprint, so to speak. And that's really what metaphysical has given to me. I mean, I'm curious to hear your experience in it.
Yeah. My grandma is an astrologer and a numerologist. And that's like, so I grew up very similarly, that this is what I was taught like as fact, this is like, it's similar, growing up in a specific religion, like this is the belief system that I grew up with. It helps you find yourself and it helps answer some of the unknowns, which I feel like is what spirituality is as a whole. And it's also absolutely been a roadmap to help me understand other people. And that's something I haven't talked a lot about that on here, but it is a super important part of my mental health journey in the same way that you were saying that it's like, it's something that's helped me greatly understand myself and understand the people around me. And it's just like, especially when it's someone doing it right, like the way my grandma does it, she's never wrong.
Right? Astrology is math and there's so many other things, but that's what I find so interesting is that this is not something that just popped up in the last 10, 20 years. Like this has been around for thousands of years. And it's always been kind of a part of the conversation.
I have a funny story that has to do with this a little bit, but so I'm a really like sciencey person too. So I didn't believe a lot of this stuff at first. So for the people who are watching this, were like, you guys are witches. Like I will say that like, that's kind of how I was at the beginning a couple years ago with this stuff, but I do believe in energy and I do believe science. Einstein believed in energy, like everything is energy. And last night I was watching the sunset with my husband. He's a surfer. And he was talking, he always like tries to tell me things about the ocean whenever we're looking out there. And he was talking to me about the ocean and how the moon has so much to do with the tides. And I was like, so you're telling me that the moon changes the tides and you believe in that, but you don't think the moon can change our bodies? We're made up of water.
Right.
And never have I thought about that before. And I was like, the little moments like that make me so happy because it is those like little breakthroughs that I think that people who really understand like nature and science can like hold on to, where you're like, oh yeah, we're all connected. And why would we not have to do with the stars and the moon? But so I was proud of my husband for making that connection.
That's awesome. I love that story. And I love seeing those little breakthroughs. I see that with my grandma all the time when she's talking to people and they're like, this stuff is bullshit. And then she tells them something about themselves that they're like, oh my God, like, how did you know that?
You're with it, right? Like people are really afraid of it. And
Totally.
I think that, there shouldn't, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's just learning about yourself.
For anyone who's interested in like being a part of September Letters in some way, what can they do?
We would love for people to go on the website, which is septemberletters.com. It is a community that is completely inclusive and immersive. You can write a letter, you can request a letter, you can read a letter. You also can comment on other people's letters, which we're really quite excited about. And the community has really embraced that feature. The request a letter feature is really kind of amazing. So if you don't see a letter that vibrates to you, you can request something specifically. And also, again, like Brittany said, you can be anonymous. You can give your first name. We don't publish last names. So, it's hard to figure out what the name would be anyway. You can give us a photo to include in your letter. It doesn't even have to be a letter. It can be a drawing. It can be a picture. It can be a doodle. It can be a poem. It can be a haiku. It can be a song lyric, whatever resonates to you and is going to help you. And be part of that community. And we're also on Instagram at September Letters. We're also on Pinterest at September Letters. One of our biggest things is that this is a safe space for people to come onto and to feel like they can say what they want to say. Another important point, which we didn't bring up, is that we are a partner of Bring Change to Mind, which we're really proud of. It's founded by Glenn Close, and our like narratives kind of overlap. So, we encourage everyone to get involved and get involved however it feels comfortable to you.
No, I hope everyone that watches this will get involved in some way, because I love that notion of building community, especially right now. That's something that's so vital and something that I think will add to that shift of like positivity in social media, as using it for, you know, the good that it could be used for, which is finding someone that you may not have ever met who lives 3,000 miles away, but who shares, you know, such a similar experience to you, or you guys have similar mental health journeys. So that's super awesome.
We have so many other things, great things planned also in the future for September Letters. We really, like you, want to bring on so many, you know, people and experts and have open conversations about mental health and really get, you know, different facets in there in terms of the website, videos and stories about letters and really build that community in so many different immersive ways, like Jasper said. So it's not just sitting there and reading letters. So there's going to be more to come with that, and keep an eye out for it.
Exciting. I would love to end on the note of what is something that is giving you hope right now.
I mean, honestly, this is like September letters. For me to read these letters, and I know Brittany shares this experience, and to see people's comments just gives me just hope that people are open to sharing. Like, that's big. The fact that people are willing to trust us with their story and trust others to read it. And so for me, particularly being in quarantine and isolation, it's given me hope for the human spirit and to see how people are really sharing in such huge ways.
I would say also, I mean, this sounds really cheesy, but it's the truth. The thing that's giving me the most hope right now is having these conversations with you. And like, I've found so much with, I'm older than you, but a little bit older than you, but your generation of people who really want to talk about mental health and want to talk about what they're going through. I mean, when I was 21, I did not have this sort of community. I didn't have this openness. I feel like if there was a place like watching what you're doing right now, where I could have felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I would have felt so much more connected and included and so much more comfortable. I would have felt like I wasn't going crazy. And I think it's so monumentally important what you're doing. And I think that does give me hope.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And absolutely the same to you guys. Just opening the conversation and creating community is like the key words, I think. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you for the kind words. And hopefully I will have my September letter up for people to view.
Perfect.
We can't wait. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for being here.